Psalms 2, verse 8 through 12. Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the utmost parts of the earth for thy possession. Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them into pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise, therefore, O ye kings. Be instructed, ye judges of earth. Serve the Lord in fear, and rejoice in trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and ye perish in the way, if his wrath be kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. That sounds like a supervenom monologue to me, but if you disagree and think it comes from a good book, we'd like to hear from you, because the show starts now.
Welcome to Talk Heathen. Today is Sunday, July 30th, the year not of our Lord, 2023. I am your host, Jamie, and with me today is Jamie. Stand by for confusion. We are live from the Free Thought Library in Austin, Texas, and we have a live studio audience with us today, a few of them in. Let's take a look. Woo! Mm-hmm. So, you ready for some co-host banter? Because I don't think we've hosted together before.
No, we haven't. Though, again, this is a continuation of the story of the gauntlet that was thrown down because you were the other host with Dan, who said, get your ass down to the library. Why aren't you here? And I'm like, yeah, fair enough. So
That's
I did.
true. So the gauntlet has been retrieved.
Yes.
Yeah,
It was kind of sticky. I don't know what you did with it, but...
No comment. I'll plead the fifth on that one. I should say that Talk Heathen is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, and secular humanism, the separation of religion and government. Talk Heathen is a live call-in show, and we have open lines, so get your calls in at 512-991-9242 or from your computer at tiny.cc/call-TH. Wow, I was almost a professional there for a second.
We're close to it.
We're close to it, yeah. Before we get started, we wanted to give you the last week's results of Talk Heathen to Me, which as a person who was here when we started saying Talk Heathen to Me, but before the segment existed, I'm excited to hear. I'm just excited to host and bring in for the first time. So I think last week's question for the Talk Heathen to Me was, what flyer would you not expect to see on a church bulletin board? And so we've got our three results here, top three. So we have Terrell Kirkman, who said, church flyer, band, try out our S3X Workers of Babylon, 6th of June, 6 p.m., which would be kind of funny because that's the date, 666. I actually wonder if when the 6th of June, fell on a Sunday. Actually, did it fall on a Sunday on
Probably.
the 2006? Because that would have been very interesting sermons to hear, I think, all across the country.
Yet another missed apocalypse, I think.
Oh, yeah, probably. Those seem to fly by weekly now, especially. Let's see. And our second result for Talk Heathen to Me, we've got Brain Dead, who suggested a flyer one would not expect to see on a church bulletin board. Please report any suspicious activity to law enforcement. Which is pretty snarky, but entirely applicable. So kudos to that. And then the last of our top three results, lots of stuff in terms of what flyer you wouldn't expect to see. On a church bulletin board, God no longer needs your financial contribution. We would prefer your thoughts and prayers instead. We also decided to pay taxes like everyone else. Flyers you would definitely not expect to see, especially at the congregation of Joel Osteen and others.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Well, so I should give the prompt for the next week. Well, first of all, thank you for writing in. Thank you for responding. Thank you for the laughs in terms of talking heathen to me, talking heathen to us all. I always enjoy a little bit of heathen talk, which is why I'm here. And we've got a prompt for you for next week, which is wrong answers only. Why is God hiding from us? So enter your best answer below in the video comments, and next week we'll reveal the top three answers. But let me ask you this. Wrong answers only. Get the ball rolling here for us, Jamie. Why is God hiding from us?
Because if we ever find him, he got some splaining to do.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah, he'll have to ask our forgiveness in that way. I'll piggyback on that and say because he's a big fan of hide and seek and wants to be the best. I don't know.
The very best. Like
The very
no one ever
best.
was.
I was gonna say to try and catch him is a Christian's real test.
Yes.
And then to train us is definitely their cause. I'm going to stop now, quick, before we have to pay royalties. I'm anxious to hear, because I haven't followed these segments very much, what your top answers are for next week. So go ahead, write in with those, and the person that makes me laugh the most wins a prize. I'll send you thoughts but no prayers. Who knows? All right. But unless you've got anything else, I think we're going to sidle into our calls.
Oh, Matt, let's go for it.
All right. Let's see. We are on with Tim from Minnesota. Tim, who seems to like atheists are becoming more dogmatic, which is disheartening. How you doing today, Tim?
I'm doing all right.
Yeah, well, welcome to Talk Heathen. You're on with Jamie and Jamie. We'll let the confusion ensue and the de-confusion happen as it will. So it says here that you think that atheists are becoming dogmatic and that this is disheartening for you. Do you want to elaborate on what brought this to your concern?
Yeah. So, basically, the same like dogma that I saw with Christians, where you couldn't question anything as far as like creationism and things of that nature. I'm seeing on issues particularly related to like free speech and COVID and things in recent years, and it's disheartening because a lot of the things that I was very much so passionately promoting in the name of science kind of turned out, from what I've seen, to not necessarily have been conveyed accurately.
Well, I can agree with you that there's been a lot of not just miscommunication, but poor communication, and then even misunderstanding from people honestly engaging with the information and issues surrounding the first pandemic of the modern era. When you're saying that you've noticed dogma about it, I'm going to make a couple of assumptions here and then check them. So a lot of communication between atheists and non-believers happens online. So people saying, you can't question that there is a pandemic, or can you give me a little bit more of a specific example so I know exactly what the dogma is that you're objecting to?
Yeah. So it was one of those things where it was correlation between the very people that I would notice would be heavily involved in the atheist community, and then having very stern stances on things like the vaccine, for just as an example.
Okay.
I went from being and I just to finish the thought, I went from being in a position initially of like, like everybody should take this. This is something very, very much pro-vaccine, to where after doing some research and knowing quite a number of people who had different side effects and things, and seeing stuff like interviews with scientists laughing about the fact that they didn't have the data to support what they were saying. And it's just like, why would this, if we all want to be skeptical and we all want to, do what's best for humanity, why would we be covering this up? And it you kind of go down the rabbit hole type of a thing.
Well, I'd like to jump in on this on a couple of points.
That would be one example.
A couple of points on this. First of all, atheism in and of itself, I think you're talking about people who are atheist adjacent, or at least come to their atheism through skepticism, which is my position.
Yep.
But I think you may be misconstruing skepticism with cynicism, and I would like to push back, because I've seen this knee-jerk distrust of science around the pandemic and other issues more recently as well do extreme amounts of harm. And while I can counter anecdote to anecdote, I would always fall back on what the actual data says. And you say scientists are saying this and studies are saying that. I'd be fascinated to see those studies if you want to email those in. I think I can't remember the email address now.
So
yeah. I'm sure they'll
Go
tell
ahead.
me in my ear because I don't have the email address either. But we'll get it to you in a second. Were you trying
Yeah,
to
you
reply to
might-
that, Tim?
Yeah, I just was going to say, so there's several specific examples that, for me at least, made me question. Number one, when I saw that several European countries changed their vaccine recommendations, and they no longer even recommend mRNA vaccines for young, healthy males. That was one.
If you don't mind me jumping
and
in
then
on that
also-
just real quick, there's a huge difference between what a government mandates and what science suggests should occur.
And also what the recommendations are may be
Oh, for
affected
sure.
by how effective other measures such as lockdowns and social distancing have been. I know that certain other countries, especially European ones, are more collectivist and are more likely to follow mandates such as that, making non-interventional things like lockdowns and mandates a little bit more effective.
Yeah, I'm specifically talking about the change in the recommendations from the governments, but it was based on a conglomerate amount of studies showing an increase in heart-related outcomes for young males.
Okay.
And the other big one was when I saw the interview through Project Veritas, which I know is dishonest in many ways, but I saw a large chunk of an unedited portion of an interview or not an interview, it was like a sneak interview, but with one of the scientists from the Johnson & Johnson, and he's just talking, he's laughing, and the guy says, so yeah, they're claiming that you guys have the data to back up that this doesn't have these side effects that are heart related. Do you have that? And he's like, nah, not really, but like, hey, I guess the test will be on when people take it. And it's just like, for me to see somebody who's supposed to be in the scientific community laughing and responding like that was very disheartening. And then
And that's why they showed you
Sorry, go ahead.
the video. Just to be clear, so what was the name of the person that was caught by Veritas, etc.? Just out of curiosity.
And that email is tv@atheist-community.org. So if you want to send us any proof that you have documentary evidence, do feel free to do so.
Yeah. Like, is it?
I can say that to you.
I mean, I don't mean to be that person, but a research scientist that works for a drug company having less than bedside manner or summarizing the data in a particular way can be quite distressing. In terms of my position in this particularly, I recognize that I have what like some people would call privilege, which is that my father is an ER doctor and an internist, and friends of the family are actually well-trained medical professionals. So my view of how things have unfolded, particularly around the communication to the public about the vaccine and the pandemic, et cetera, has been disheartening in terms of my belief that our public institutions, that our public institutions are good at communicating what the results of the science is. And in fact, actually, around COVID-19, there's a lot of interesting things, at least from a science research point, because it's a respiratory disease, but the lack of expected complications from asthma make it interesting. And the last time I checked, the interesting question about related factors to telomeres and the reproduction of cells in the body make it very interesting. But I will say, yes, around research science, particularly medical science, especially around vaccines, anything with a needle, there's going to be a lot of anxiety, there's going to be a lot of fear, and it's going to be very easy to find a lot of things that are very scary because a global pandemic is a terrifying thing that we've gone through, and the disease is still here, and there'll be another one in less than 100 years, just statistically. Yeah, I mean, the pathways for... I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but you've lived through that's why I say the first pandemic of the modern era, because I anticipate living through at least one or two more, hopefully, if the next one doesn't get me. But yeah, the maybe we won't have another one in 10 years, maybe we won't have another one in 20 years, but if you're a betting person, don't bet on more than 40 or 50 years until the next one. Sorry, that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But in terms of the communication about vaccine safety and side effects, it's risk management, which is worse, the spread of a global pandemic or side effects, right? And the rate of their occurrence. And the rate of their occurrence is low enough that in terms of what is best for humanity, the math works out and the science works out that it's best to go for immunization. And I know that there are a lot of stories and a lot of testimonials and even statistics and studies on vaccine side effects, particularly around this vaccine, and they get communicated because it's a matter of great public interest because the public of the globe is interested in communicating about them. But until there's hundreds of millions, then your statistics in terms of how frequent complications from vaccines or side effects from vaccines occur is statistically small enough that as you're determining where to place your bets and how to roll the dice in terms of what's going to happen with disease and what's going to happen with medicine, the vaccine is still the safer option.
And,
however, there are, I will say to your point, there are people that communicate and say, no, the vaccine is literally Satan, and anyone that ever takes a vaccine, 100%, their soul is going to be gone, and it's full of poison. And then there's, on the other side of this, people that say, no, the vaccine is perfectly safe, it's never caused any side effect. Anyone that says that also believes that Trump is anointed by God, and that, this, that, and the other. And to be quite honest, in terms of medicine and medical practice, it's never that clear cut. It's never, this is 100% safe. It was not 100% safe for me to drive here today, right? Just in terms of statistical safeness. And then every time I go to the grocery store and I buy food there, I'm trusting an entire set of institutions that I have no direct contact with, that I have never looked all the way through the supply chain from cow to burger before I've eaten cow meat. But as far as the public institutions that we have in the United States, at least for now, I trust them to get me a double cheeseburger without poisoning me.
And just to kind of speak on this, and then this will be kind of my last point.
Okay.
I like what you just said, where there is a certain amount of nuance and a certain amount of risk assessment, and somebody with asthma or pre-existing condition, their risk assessment is going to be different than, an athlete at the peak of their prime, or maybe somebody's immunocompromised grandparent. And so I feel like it was very disheartening to see people who had championed skepticism basically being the same people who were championing, banning and canceling and all that type of stuff, people who were simply sharing a different opinion. And instead of just presenting the facts, like similar to what you just did, of like talking about, okay, what it actually is the risk assessment and actually having the conversation, it kind of became people going to their corners. And I know for me, like I said, I knew several people who claimed to have vaccine related injuries. And so like when I would go and I would ask people, different friends who are pretty involved in the secular community, as you may say, it was almost like, well, how dare you question this? And there's been people banned from social media platforms for saying things that, in hindsight, might have even been true, or at least were worth a consideration.
Well, here's one of the problems, let me just interject, with the whole, we must have both sides of the argument, we must let people say what they want to say. One of the big problems is that with especially difficult scientific subjects.
I can take the rest of it offline, just so you know. I'll listen.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry, for a second I thought you were going to say that little bit of audio that got interjected there was you, and I was going to say, well, if you're changing my life for the better, that'd be great. Well, yeah, sorry, I didn't want to cut it.
Basically, what I was saying is that, especially with these complicated subjects, and even to bring it back to atheism, talking about theological and supernatural subjects, all the other side that doesn't have the facts have to do is spread doubt. And unfortunately, that's real easy. I'm just asking questions. Do your own research. Those phrases annoy me because they have made people stray away. And there's a difference between questioning and just blanket distrust. And as I say, I've seen it do harm, and it does not bode very well. And if that makes me dogmatic in being annoyed when people will not actually sit down and trust the numbers and go, but what if, then yeah, I do reserve the right to get annoyed because I've seen it do harm.
Well, I think we're going to let you go, Tim. I might have one more thing to say, but thank you for calling in, and I hope you enjoy watching the rest of the show. And I hope you stay safe out there, and whatever you choose to do with yourself, I hope it's fun and safe. Was a weird way for me to phrase that. Let's see. In any case, I think we've got an announcement. Although, okay, I do have to throw this to the audience just because I have the maturity of a goofy teenager. Anyone else, when they hear the phrase vaccine-related injury, just picture like a really clumsy nurse that like trips and sticks themselves in the arm with it? Because so I've not thought about like, oh, there's a complication from the medical practice or whatever as like, oh, it's an injury, the same way that like spraining my ankle is. Anyway, we have an important announcement. It comes around once every year. No, it's not Christmas. It's the annual Bat Cruise. Attention all. Get ready for the extraordinary experience at the annual Bat Cruise on Saturday, August 26th. It's 1 month away. Get your tickets now. Join the atheist community of Austin for a fun summer evening on the water, conversing with like-minded free thinkers. Meet Forrest Valke, J. Mike, and other hosts of the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, and the Nonprofits. They'll be on board to mingle and chat throughout a 2-hour bat cruise along Lady Bird Lake. The cruise will pause at the Congress Avenue Bridge at sundown for the emergence of the world's largest urban bat colony, pride of Austin. Even our sports teams get named the River Bats, and the other sports team name that I just forgot that I shouldn't have brought up because I can't remember it, and I don't follow hockey, so I don't even know how good the Ice Bats are. They might be terrible. That might be the shame of Austin. I don't know. But we do have the largest urban bat population in the world, and what more perfect mascot for the city that always keeps it weird. Again, that's August 26th. That Sunday. You should come on down. It's always a good time. I've gone basically every year that I'm available to go. Jamie will be there. Jamie will be there. I'm sure that there will be a third person named Jamie that's on there. And what's better than 3 people named Jamie? The hosts of the shows that you like to know and like-minded free thinkers. Also, it's been known to happen that just hosts of other secular shows show up unannounced. I mean, they get tickets, and you should get tickets as well. But it's a fun time. If you've never had the experience of going to a place, and I feel 2 ways about this phrase, but feeling like you're amongst your people, it's a really powerful social experience. So if you've ever felt like, wow, you know, I'm in a church, or my parents brought their church friends home from church, and it's Sunday, and I'm just trying to play video games and have a normal time, and now I feel like the only sober person at a party of crazy people talking about how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. Experience the opposite of that. Come find community and, well, I was about to say fellowship, although I think that might be too associated with the way Christians talk about their community.
We can just co-op then.
We can be a good group of fellows together.
I'm just looking forward to Forrest Valko. Just Forrest, bats, go.
Yeah.
And then you've got an hour.
Yeah. That, and I think I mispronounced his name as I was reading the announcement, which is embarrassing because we've met even. I think you're allowed to mispronounce someone's name if you haven't met them, but I've met Forrest, so that's on me. In any case, did you want to circle back around to anything in terms of risk analysis and health and the sometimes problematic way that people communicate, even when they're talking about like the right, and I put that in air quotes, conclusion to draw from crunching the numbers?
My thoughts are, first of all, does he really think the fact that there is correlation between skepticism, scientific belief, and atheism is hurting the atheist mission of like separating religion and government and that kind of thing? Does he think it makes us less credible? And we had a caller in a couple of months ago when I was talking who kept saying that we were dogmatic about evolution. And I'm like, you don't actually know what dogma is. Like, we accept change. Like, I've never not accepted the changes in the data and the new data that comes in. I've always accepted it. I would be remiss if I didn't. And it's like, That word dogma, I do not think it means what you think it means.
You keep using this word. Yeah. I was going to say, there's not actually that much dogmatism about anything in the atheist community. There's people that are very assertive about the conclusions they have, but dogma, like you said, is like refusing the new evidence.
And some people are just assholes. I mean, that's just it.
Well, that's true. And being an asshole is independent of your beliefs about God.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to say the most dogmatic thing that you'll find a bunch of people in the atheist community doing is we tend to be a kinkier lot, so there's probably some collars and leashes around. But that's as close as we get to dogma, I swear. In any case, well, they're retooling secular sexuality, so I have to bring some spice somewhere. Anyway, are you ready for the next caller?
I was, well, maybe not born ready, but give me a few years into my life, and I was kind of sort of ready. So let's hear it.
At age 6.
Age 6.
All right.
Let's go.
All right, and we've got from the great state of Ohio, great but not as great as Texas, the great state of Ohio, we've got Nick, who wants to talk about how veganism is consistent with secular morality. And I have taken your call because I'm not afraid of how pissed off the internet is going to be at me for not being a vegan and for already mentioning a cheeseburger. How are you doing today, Nick?
Oh, pretty good. It was good to hear, I guess, like the previous call, because, I mean, I guess that kind of segues like super nicely into everything, related to, I mean, I don't know if you want to like put it this way, but I feel like we're sort of buying ourselves a lot of really silly lottery tickets to, SARS, MERS, swine flu, bird flu, even flu. I was
just going to say, like, not silly lottery tickets. They're a bad investment. Don't do it. Sorry, that's just from me. So you're sidling into veganism in terms of beef and the flesh of other beasts that we consume being a better vector for disease than plant life?
Oh, I mean, like, it's like unquestionable. I mean, there's no doubt that you have all of these diseases. It's always a farm with chickens that bird flu, swine flu. No question about that. Someone actually challenged me on that recently, and then I looked it up. I was like, oh, wow. Like, also like MRSA. Like, I didn't even realize that like antibiotic-resistant bacteria come from,
you don't get a plague or a pandemic, like even the Black Death, until you have unsafe health conditions and a large number of animals that can be disease vectors around a large human population, right? Like the things that become pandemics and kill us, because diseases don't evolve and last a long time. They're not well suited to their environment if they do immediately kill the beasts that they end up growing in, right? Like smallpox and even COVID-19 are things that we've got from animals that we eat, right? In the animals that they developed in, they developed to not be deadly, to not be lethal, to not kill the thing that houses them. But then they spread and they jump species, which happens very rarely, but when it does happen, it's very dangerous because the things that they do to survive, depending on whether it's a virus or not, in another animal, they replicate and do in a human, and it usually makes us sick and die. So in terms of, for example, pig meat being a very good vector for disease, as well as a very good topping on a cheeseburger, I'm right there with you on both counts. Although, admittedly, I'm not trying to slip that one in on there either. I'm jumping to the conclusion that perhaps you're a vegan and didn't have a double cheeseburger today. Is that fair to say?
No. Yeah, I'm definitely a vegan. Did not have a double cheeseburger.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say
there's no judgment if you have a cheat day. Yeah.
I'm just going to jump straight out ahead of this and say that, yes, veganism is the morally superior position. It has many health benefits. I will absolutely agree with that, and I will take the position that I am in the morally inferior position and the health inferior position as a meat eater. I am trying to cut down the amount of red meat I eat and the amount of dairy I consume, but that's more out of a health concern rather than a morality concern. I would eat lab-grown meat if it was available to me, or other protein sources from insects and the like. But I'm not going to argue that it's not the more superior position morally.
Yeah, I guess.
I have a slightly different slice of it. I've spent less time going into the specific details in terms of where you define the difference in terms of species and kingdom, but I just have to say, because we're sitting next to each other and hosting the same show, that I'm less there with you in terms of it being a morally superior position.
And that's fascinating.
Yeah, we'll have our duel after the show. I think we've got a couple broadswords back there. So no. I was gonna say we've been talking about having a sword fight for a while. But it's good. So what are the things that I was interested in? I mean, sure, there's definitely health benefits, and if you can apply any general rule across the population for health, it's better to eat mostly plants. And then even before you get into vectors for disease. But what you said here is that it's consistent with secular morality. And so far, the main points that we've touched on are health-related, probably because we were just talking about vaccines on the previous call. Did you want to touch more on the moral aspect of your veganist position? If that's not too aggressive to say. You veganist, bringing your veganism in here while I'm thinking about cheeseburgers.
Yeah, I guess, so that's the problem with any sort of health or large population argument is that even if you were to let's say argue with the disease vector argument, what I've found is the problem with that is human nature. So if you say, let's say I could conclusively prove that we need to cut our meat consumption by 99%, then every single person is going to say, great, I'll do nothing. And then 99 people will take action for me, So,
the free rider effect.
Yeah, so it's sort of not really a particularly convincing position. I guess the thing that I would challenge on in terms of the morality where you say oh well it's a morally I would eat lab grown meat if it were possible, is sort of that we don't accept that for any other moral position that we would take. So for instance, if you think that dog fighting is immoral, you wouldn't say well, I'm waiting for VR dog fighting with smell-o-vision to get super realistic, and then I'll stop dog fighting. Or you say
smell-o-vision is you made me wrinkle my nose. Yeah.
But I have thoughts on virtual representations of otherwise objectionable things, because you're getting into the realm of, well, what about war games? What about virtual murder? What about this? What about that? I've done many, many war crimes on computers. So many.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't see myself as an immoral person because I have witnessed and interacted with a virtual representation of a reprehensible act. And the thing is, with secular morality, I've always felt, and feel free to slap me across the back of the head and correct me if I'm wrong, it's relative, and we make judgments based on circumstance and context, because, yes, maybe it is the morally superior thing overall to not eat meat, but if you're starving and all you have is that cheeseburger, well, I'm going to let you eat that damn cheeseburger.
I was going to say, you're going to have a hard time stopping me. Sorry, I keep bringing up cheeseburgers because usually if I host a show... if I host a show, I have one before the show because it's the right amount of nutrients and food to carry me through the show without getting hungry. But now it's on the brain, and I know exactly how far the nearest place that serves one is. But yeah, in terms of the virtual display of things that, if they were real, would be immoral, I think it touches on an aspect of morality that's most important to remember. And I'm not strictly just a consequentialist, morally speaking, or philosophically speaking, but I think that if you're not considering the consequences of an action in terms of its morality, that you're really missing a key point. And in terms of I'm playing a war game and committing as many... I didn't come in today expecting to hear my co-host admit to committing war crimes. I'll admit to being surprised by that. But in terms of playing video games, etc., something might turn someone's stomach, but it's important to separate that from the actual consequences of one's actions. So I will say, the other thing that surprises me is that we haven't talked about the conditions of animals in factory farms, which is where I usually expect people that are talking about the morality of veganism to go. I'm sorry, I think I cut you off there, though, on what you were trying to say.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So I wasn't trying to say anything about like the morality of, let's say, doing something VR or whatever. What I was trying to say about like was that lab grown meat, like saying something along the lines of like, well, I think that it's morally superior to not eat meat. I'm waiting around for lab grown meat. I'm just saying that like in any other context, you wouldn't accept that argument if for anything else that was like immoral.
I do.
You wouldn't accept the argument that like, oh, I'm waiting for like some, like alternate form of something that's immoral to happen before, you would just say, well, okay, well, that doesn't make an action moral. Like, do you understand what I'm saying?
I'm not sure that I do. Are you saying that you're going to have to run that one by me, because what it sounded like you were saying was that if something was immoral, you wouldn't be waiting for the simulated version of it. Run that one by me one more time. I think the phrasing threw me off.
No, yeah, that's exactly it. Like, if something's immoral, it's not a good defense of it to say, like, well, I'm waiting for, like, some alternate simulation of that immoral thing.
Well, why not? I mean, what is the immorality in eating meat? It's the taking of the animal's life or exploiting the animal as a free creature and that kind of thing. I understand that. But cells in a petri dish in a lab have no consciousness, have no freedom.
Sure.
They are biomass.
Yeah.
And there is no moral objection to eating that, even if it is the same cells. Like, I might be a little bit squicked out, but someone said, yeah, we made lab-grown meat. It's human meat. Would you like to try it? I'm like, for the lols, maybe. I don't know. But I wouldn't find it morally objectionable because it's just cells in a petri dish. It came from nothing. It doesn't have a consciousness. It isn't at all going to harm anyone for me to interact with that in any way. So what is actually the problem?
Sorry. Sorry. I think you might be misunderstanding me again.
You're saying you wouldn't continue to engage in the action while waiting for it, for the simulated version. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
that makes much more sense. You're saying if Jamie here believed that it was immoral, he wouldn't continue eating meat and then say, okay, well, I'll wait to stop eating meat until I can eat meat that is moral.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, no. The ideal position would be, of course, I would stop eating meat right now and then be able to start be enjoying my lab-grown cheeseburgers. You've got me infected with cheeseburgers.
Well, if you were going to get infected with something, cheeseburgers are a good infection to have. You should have gotten a cheeseburger vaccine. Although, actually, that's just a joke. Please do not inject cheeseburger into your veins. Don't do it.
We're going into secular section because that's beef.
I think that...
Oh, yeah. Sorry. What were you saying, Tim?
Yeah, go ahead.
Or no, I'm sorry, Nick.
Oh, yeah. So I was going to say, so in terms of like, okay, well, one might say then like, okay, well, it would then be left to, sort of to the vegans to demonstrate that somehow there is something unethical about eating animal products, even if they were like, quote unquote, I don't know, humanely slaughtered, to use that phrase. And you brought up factory farming, which is just an excellent point, because there's this thing that I used to do, and I think a lot of vegans, it's like this assumption that we sort of implicitly accept, which is that, it sort of strengthens the argument to say that, like, if you have an animal and you raised it ethically, and then you had sort of all good days and then one bad day sort of a thing, that would somehow strengthen the position of eating meat. In fact, I think it's the opposite. And I haven't really heard many people talk about it in terms of this way. In fact, it makes your argument way worse, because what it means then is it draws a really contorted lasso around the sorts of things that you might think are ethical and unethical. So you could sort of like imagine, okay, you could sort of get into like things where people sort of give you funny looks, like, what about like eating mentally handicapped humans, cutting the fins off of a dolphin and throwing it back in the water to drown, and like all these sorts of things where people are like, okay, like you start to sound like pretty psychotic. And then you say, okay, great. Well, what about like, for instance, like torturing, like beating an animal? Okay, like no, but somehow, so we agree that it's like in all these cases unethical to harm a being that has subjective experience. Yeah, we make this weird exception. And so the problem with something like special pleading is that it's saying that you're making a distinction with no justification. So in fact, there's no way for me to prove that there's no justification for this. One would have to ask for justification and have the person show up empty-handed. And so that's sort of like the thing, is that, in fact, it's the burden of proof would be to show that justification for making that exception.
Well, again, get ready with the head smack here, Jamie. That's why a lot of us, a lot of people in the secular community say that it's that secular humanism is the flourishing of human well-being specifically, and whether that supersedes animal well-being. Again, we are talking about into a more ethical thing, but when it comes to secular morality, it depends who you ask a little bit. But yeah, human flourishing is often the phrase that I've heard.
Yeah. And then I think I'm going to find that my position deviates somewhat from the mainstream here, because there's this general assumption about applying moral value directly to pain and suffering, and I see this issue from a very different perspective. There's this idea that moral rightness and the proper way to act is dependent on or a direct reflection of abstract ideas abstracted from the nature of human beings and all of the matter and energy that's fluctuating through the quantum field that we exist in. And one of the problems that I've found in my philosophical ruminations on moral philosophy, he said self-aggrandizingly, is that perspective I just find significantly less persuasive now. So assumptions that people have, and as far as they take them, like harm is bad. Okay, but to me, that's a very, very, very flimsy place to start in terms of we're going to start here and then we're going to go from there in terms of determining what the proper way for human beings to interact with everything around us. Right, we have a different consideration for what it is morally correct for me to do when I interact with a rock, than when I interact with a tree, then when I interact with a cow, than when I interact with a fellow human being, right? And you have to. The problem that I have when people try to lay out the moral arguments about harm to animals, which, to be clear, before I start sounding too psychotic, I don't. It's not an end goal to seek, but there's this special perspective that I hear in the arguments offered to human beings that isn't given to the actions of other animals. To some degree, human beings acting for their survival and in their own instinct, I put in the same context as a snake poisoning a mouse before it eats it, or a mound of incredibly aggressive ants consuming something to death. And so in terms of understanding that there is no real distinction between me and the rest of nature, simply because I live in this wonderful lollipop, candy cane, plastic world that we've constructed for ourselves, that I'm a really big fan of, because among other things, it means I can eat it means that I am capable, from where I am in the United States, of eating almost as many cheeseburgers as I want. From that to modern medicine, etc., sure, it gives me this situation and this perspective that's entirely detached from nature, that's entirely detached from my natural environment. Like an orca in an aquarium, nothing about my life has anything to do, really, with what it is to be a human naturally, except for my interaction with other humans. And so trying to start from there and build an argument is basically where I am in terms of my view of how these things go. So when we get to things like factory farms, yes, it gets very complicated, but one of the places that I look is to ants in particular, because among the animal kingdom, in some ways, I find the behavior of ants more similar to the behavior of human societies than anything else. They're a species that has mastered a form of communication. It's chemical, and ours is better. Verbal communication, I find. Look around you. We can pass on knowledge 3 generations down, and ants can't do that. But in terms of the way that we behave socially, or the way that human societies interact with their environment, and the way that ant colonies interact with their environment, there's a lot of similarities. So when you get slaver ants or ants that farm, I look to that in terms of a perspective of how much harm, how much damage, how much destruction is justified when a living thing or a collection of living things is interacting with the environment around it. So even before we get to, is this causing harm? Well, the shortcut that people take is human flourishing, human harm. But we do still care. Even people that will say, no, it's human flourishing, etc. They're not out murdering dogs just for fun.
No.
So it's a question that I think gives us the opportunity to ask a deeper question about what we mean by harm and what we mean by morality. Because until recently, as best I can tell philosophically, applying morality to the interactions between humans and non-humans is new.
I guess I don't understand how that would, like, any of this would sort of draw the distinctions that you're interested in between, like, for instance, saying that all the other things I listed that are unethical and yet making that exception for eating animals.
Well, let me ask you this, just sorry to just quickly interject. Do you believe that our ability to argue the merits of secular morality are damaged by the fact that we eat meat?
That relies a little bit on a semantic overload. So in the one sense, obviously you could, the fact that somebody is eating meat, like in principle wouldn't stop them from articulating, for instance, arguments against a prime mover, so in that sense, no. I do think that it's a highly self-inconsistent position. And I think, in fact, I'll go ahead and say this. I think that you'll find, so like, if you go outside and you touch grass, which is, for some people, might be a tall ask, what you'll find is that people would, like, when I tell people like that I'm a vegan and that I've been a vegan for like close to a decade now, people are interested in talking to me about that. And they would rather listen to the business end of a nail gun than have me talk about my atheism. So it's definitely like you just get way more bite on that, no questions asked. And I think that it's not an unreasonable thing to say, like, look, well, I mean, it's sort of, I think when you go out, so you get like a lot of these types of same arguments. So essentially what you get is arguments that are something along the lines of like, that just try to introduce general sloshiness into morality. And so you'll get things like, like this whole like idea about like nature and stuff like that. The truth is we just simply don't accept, we just agree that that's a bad argument for everything else that we say that we decide is immoral, right? We agree that slavery is immoral and yet ants enslave each other, and cannibalism's immoral, even though plenty of species, including even up to chimps, cannibalize. So, we just quite simply don't accept any of that argument. We don't say like, well, Jeffrey Dahmer, let me defend him real quick. When we look out and we see ants, we really see chimps cannibalize each other. Can we really say, that this was something wrong? Or like, is it the same thing with like this idea of like, to say like, well, my morality is based on humanism wouldn't actually be a defense of the special pleading. It would just simply be restating it. It's just simply saying, well, human because human. Okay, that doesn't necessarily really enlighten us. So none of those arguments are good. And the problem with arguing with that is you would already agree with me in literally any other context. And so I do think that in fact you do get a lot of bite. You just get you get a lot
more bite that way.
There's this idea.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
I would say just there are a couple of points that you said even just now that I disagree with. My problem with what Jeffrey Dahmer did. Well, okay, there's a stomach turning, etc., but is a violation of the other people's will. When I die, if science has no need of my body, the concept, just philosophically, of providing sustenance, and then, it's a little bit almost regressive sounding, but of providing sustenance to my friends and family in the form of being a meal is not morally reprehensible to me. In fact, it's poetic. So in terms of cannibalism specifically, I don't see the moral issue there. I just see the issue of the violation of human will, right? Obviously, eating someone against their will is wrong, but it's the will and not the eating that I have a problem with. The violation of the human will that I have a problem with.
And you say special pleading, but you can call me a speciesist, but I'm always going to side with the human over the animal in most circumstances. The burning building, there's a puppy and a baby. I'm going to say the baby. There's a puppy and a old woman who's 10 days away from dying of stage 4 cancer. I'm still going to say the old woman. So, yeah, I'm a speciesist.
Yeah. I agree with you, yeah.
It's not going to stop you from throwing a tennis ball out the window. Hopefully the puppy follows it as you save the old woman. Mm-hmm. Just trying to throw a little bit of a creative wrench into the next version of Philippa Foot's contribution to morality there.
Right, but the idea that so again, you don't accept that argument. So like if you talk about, okay, let's say there's like an old person that's 10 seconds away from death in a burning building and an infant, of course you would save the infant. But you wouldn't accept that same argument that you just used against animals against killing old people in general, So again,
well, it's of course not. Those are entirely different. It's an entirely different moral question in terms of causing a death that otherwise wouldn't have happened and preventing a death 10 seconds before something else. But there's lots of things of value to humanity that you can throw in there that I find that are more complicated. So, for example, like the only existing copy of a person's will, right, which I don't know why people haven't used this as a question as well, in a burning building, and a person who's 10 seconds away from cancer, that's a tricky moral question for me. Because one of these two things represents a human being's last will and testament. And so for me, it's a lot about consciousness and human will, although I don't say that because I can't define at what point a person becomes conscious, because even a person who's in a vegetative state with no hope of recovery with modern medicine, I still think of and still say, okay, well, my morality would seem incomplete if I didn't consider this person and they're, I've taken to philosophically using the words soul and spirit, but I can't do that here because it has a very different context on an atheist show.
It doesn't matter. That's focusing on the details. If it's still like a 10-year-old and an 80-year-old, let's say.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
if you could only save one. Yeah. It's not an argument for massacring 80-year-olds. So saying that
that's true.
Save both of those over a pig is not an argument for massacring a pig. So again, we just all these arguments that we just quite simply don't accept. Like, it
well stated.
That distinction.
Yeah, that's a very well stated argument, actually, in terms of the comparative value of two things versus the absolute value of whether or not it's right to slaughter them for food. Which I'm also not saying. I've never eaten a human, so. There's that as well. There's some concerned looks in the audience after I started talking about cannibalism. So I just want to clarify. When I talk about how I'm hungry for a cheeseburger, I don't mean you. In any case, this has been a very interesting call. I wish that I was coming back next week and could ask you to call in again. But I think we got to hop off because we've got announcements and a question from the audience as well. But thank you for calling in, Nick.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, and I will push myself to go online and communicate textually in these chats if you'd like as well. And then I'm sure if you throw it in a super chat, people will pay attention as well as the folks at home who want to support the things that we do here. But first, I'll sign off with you. Thank you for calling in, Nick. It's been an excellent conversation. Rarely do I find that I can end up having a productive conversation about veganism where I hear something I haven't heard before. So thank you for that.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. And we've got an announcement about doopity-doo-to-do. All right. Not about doopity-doo-to-do, but about supporting the ACA. So one of the largest ways that we take donations are through the Super Chat. So if you're watching right now and you like or even dislike the things that we're saying or doing or my face, whatever, say it in a Super Chat. Otherwise, don't hear you, son. So you can make those donations online. I believe they're still tax deductible, although you can ask a lawyer about that. There's a few ways to support the ACA. There's a new limited edition T-shirt, Science, because the answer never turned out to be magic, ever. Which, actually, now that I have become aware of today. I might get actually two of those.
I'm wearing it right now.
Yeah, it's true. Oh, are you? Oh, I didn't see the back of your shirt. Excellent. We've got an excellent model here of the shirt, and you can see it there on your screen. And you can find those online at tiny.cc/merch ACA, MERCHACA. And then please remember to like and subscribe, become a channel member, throw some money our way. Hey, who knows? Maybe I'll do a dance. And if you send a super chat with a question or a comment, we do our best to get to those first and to answer as many as we can. So help support your local nonprofit. Show the people who believe that atheists are angry individuals that are just rebelling against society and mad at their parents, that actually know it's just that we don't believe in magic, and hey, guess what? We care about each other as well. It's not that I have any problems with my parents right now. Or that anyone else does. That's why the audience is here. The audience is here because they are the coolest people in the world, and you should join them the next time we have a live show. Woo! Yeah. Pandering to the audience.
Yes.
Recipe for success. And I think, are we ready with our audience question? Perhaps? I can vamp some more. Oh, okay, here we go. Audience question.
Well, I promise not to make any snide comments about your face. But, as an admitted war criminal, I mean, who knows where that goes. Seriously, though, kind of piggybacking on the last question, I find that veganism seems to be a somewhat entitled viewpoint, because the truth is that a lot of the people on the planet can't afford it, even in first world countries, much less others. And I was just kind of wanting to get your perspective on that.
I think it's a very good point that doesn't get brought up enough, which is that there's a lot of context that's necessary in terms of evaluating what the morality of, even killing a person in self-defense becomes ethical. So trying to tell someone to do something that they either can't do or that they would go bankrupt doing, or even just like diminishing their well-being in an economic system, if you're in a situation where it's not feasible to eat or act in a specific way, how much moral pressure, how much moral obligation can be placed on you for that is a very good point to bring up. So in terms of people saying, like, you know, as our brilliant and beautiful audience member has said today, that it's a position about what's possible. I wholeheartly agree with you.
And on the other side of it, if we have that luxury, it behooves us to use our luxuries for the betterment of others and mankind in general. It's like why we do charity and things like that. If you can do a good thing, do a good thing. But if you can't do a good thing because your position says you can't, then don't feel guilty that you can't.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
It's true. Yeah. You should do as best as you can and no better.
I do all that may become a man. He who does more is none.
We've got a poet here.
I'm so pretentious.
He's going to say, oh, well, way to show me up. I'm going to storm out now. I can't work like this. He's stealing my spotlight. No, we do have a super chat that just came in from Greg Murkowski asking about whether we know the band of heathens out of Austin. Oh, no, it's good. I can see it from here. They're coming to KC. I'm assuming that's Kansas City, and they look interesting. Also, and he's happy to see me as well. Well, as am I. I love seeing myself too. Glad you're enjoying the show. I don't know that particular band, but I am going to talk up my hometown a little bit. But that's probably because at any given time in Austin, there's about 3,000 active bands doing stuff. Live music capital of the world. More record deals signed here during the weeks of South by Southwest than in the rest of the country the rest of the year combined. Cough, cough. But that is a good question. And if they're coming to KC, or if they're touring generally, I mean, I'm happy to listen to music as long as it's good. Thank you for your super chat donation, Mr. Murkowski.
Excellent. I don't see enough live music myself. I should probably get out more.
Yeah.
Touch some grass.
Yeah. This expression, touch some grass, I think I've heard it for the first time twice today. Is that like a general...
It's an online thing. It came up during the end of the pandemic when people had been terminally online and hadn't gone out. It's like, oh, you're really angry about something, why don't you go out and touch some grass?
Oh yeah.
Not in this heat.
Okay. Well,
you mad?
Well, this reinforces a couple of things for me. One, I'm not cool enough to know all the internet things, and then two, that not everything that sounds like either a euphemism for pooping or doing drugs is a euphemism for pooping or doing drugs. So, in which case, yeah, you should get out and touch some grass in a way that isn't a euphemism.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got another super chat that came in.
Yeah. Ashleash.
Ashleash? Yeah.
Stop selling out. Stand up. Use logic.
Say, is that to me? Because I am here free of charge. They're not even going to bring me a cheeseburger, I bet.
Yeah.
So, but yes, these are things that are good to do. Even just to exercise your legs by standing up if possible, but also be firm in your convictions and engage with other people. It's one of the rare privileges of being a member of our species is the richness of our ability to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
And then also logic, yes, much better than the other crap that people substitute for logic when they're trying to decide things.
But my feelings, though, my feelings.
I know that, and then, oh my God, the number of people that have asked me my star sign in the last week alone. It's a fun summer. It's very much a hot boy summer, going swimming, very hot out, we're setting records. But does it really matter when the relative position of the stars were when I was born?
There are
Quit trying
only
to tell
12
me that you know what my personality is.
There are only 12 types of day. Did you not know that? Only 12.
Only 12, and there's only 12 types of people. That's more sophisticated than people that go, there's only two kinds of people. People that, love Jesus and people that don't, or whatever. I say there's only two kinds of people. People that think there's only two kinds of people and other people. And if you know my sense of humor, you'll yeah, that's my favorite type of joke. I think we've got time for another call right here. We've got, let's see, we've got Guy from, it doesn't say where, but, from Texas. Hey, howdy, neighbor. Said that becoming atheist was not just a significant event in your life, but something that saved your life. How you doing? Welcome to the show, and tell us a story.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. So, what did you want to tell us about your deconversion? Oh no, the call dropped. Oh wait, no, did it? Or did it not? As I said a moment ago, I may not be cool enough to get all the internet things, and I'm also perhaps not technologically versed enough to be able to operate everything. Oh no, the call did drop. So I think we have missed out on an excellent story, but we do have one more very important announcement to make, which is the reading of the top 5 patrons. A nonprofit organization lives and dies based on your support. It's a sort of a diplomatic, democratic appeal, except you have to vote with your wallet. So please send in your donations, and you too could be as smart, as beautiful, as logical as our top 5 patrons, who are Dingleberry Jackson, Aname, Oops, all singularity, Dever Viljean, and Kalevi Helveti. And we have an honorable mention this week as well, whose name I may also mispronounce, John Doan, or Doan. Doan is funnier, but probably not how you pronounce your last name. So to the people whose names I've mispronounced, I apologize. And to those that I've pronounced correctly, that's the standard of being human. And to all of our patrons, especially our top 5 most beautiful patrons, thank you for your donations and thank you for your support.
Oh, and we also just got a new super chat in from a Twinkle Toes, £1.49. Cheers.
Oh.
No message, just English money. The best money.
The best money. I was going to say, okay, well, let's throw some international monetary and currency market shade. Oh yeah, is that why it's still the world reserve currency, or did that get replaced by a different currency? What was that currency that replaced it? No. I won't tease my Limey friend too much.
Oh no, come at me, bro.
Oh yeah, just like you came at my country, what was it, the last time in 18-something? We've all forgotten it.
Why is the White House white again?
Yeah.
That's a war.
Yeah, we needed to redecorate anyway. So, Yeah, we kept one corner of the original desk that was there that's burnt or something. Yeah, which is fun. There was a funny video that was making fun of diplomacy as a thing, where there was a fire ravaging it, and they're like, the president has offered as a diplomatic gift to begin negotiations with the fire the remaining unburned piece of the original. Yeah. We're gonna share a lot of jokes, I think, because anyone else that makes a War of 1812 joke back at me has the same sense of humor that they draw on. Okay, in any case, I got to get out of here. I got to get a cheeseburger. I got to get these happy people the opportunity to stretch their legs. So I think we're gonna do the outro now. Are you ready for that?
Mm-hmm.
As long as I haven't forgotten what I'm doing here as the consummate professional that I am. So, have you ever said to yourself, I really love the content that the ACA creates, but I wish there was a way that I could get it all the time? Well then, we've got you covered. We now have 2 24/7 live streams. Yes, that's every hour, every day. AXP TV delivers a constant stream of shows, clips, and specials from the over 26 seasons of the Atheist Experience, and now Heathen TV provides you with the clips from Talk Heathen. A show that I think may perhaps even be superior, no bias. Watch or simply listen to your favorite hosts and discover some of the hosts you've never heard. Visit tiny.cc/AXPTV and tiny.cc/HeathenTV to join the fun. And now we've got our outro announcements. So I'd like to remind everyone about next week's Talk Heathen to me, and I look forward to hearing and to reading your suggestions for the answer. Wrong answers only to the question, why is God hiding from us? And if you reply in the comments, we'll find those top 3 answers and we'll read them out on next week's show. I'd also like to remind you that you should like and subscribe. Yeah, we're on YouTube, so we're going to say that one thing that every YouTuber says. Please like and subscribe and ring the bell to hear notifications. You should become a member. You can press the join button below the video, and you can support us on Patreon at tiny.cc/PatreonTH. We now also have the channel that houses all of the shows from our audio podcast, tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. Man, we've got a lot of things. You don't have to memorize them all. I'm sure you can rewind that video and catch them, even if you don't grab a pencil and pen a pencil and paper the way that I do when I need to remember things. And you can also become a part of the Talk Heathen community in our fan-run Facebook page at tiny.cc/FBTHG. So we've got all of that and more. I'd like to just throw it to our excellent crew, those who do all the work and get almost none of the glory. So if we can say a good thank you to our crew with the crew camera there, all these hardworking volunteers volunteering their labor so that hopefully you will donate money to support an excellent cause. Thank you to all of our hardworking volunteers, and thank you to our live studio audience for coming out. And I think we are going to send out some love rings and do our outro announcements. Whether or not you believe, if you're an essential worker, we thank you for putting your lives at risk to get us through the tough times. If you don't believe, this is your community. Plug in to ACD, the fan-run Facebook groups, or come to the building and have community. And if you don't believe, we don't hate you. We just think you're wrong.
We're just not convinced.
We're just not convinced. I jumped on your line.
We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live, Friday at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.